Listen up, this is a base Porsche Cayman, and ever since Porsche decided to put a 4-cylinder in it, all I've heard is, oh, the Cayman is not as good as it used to be, or it's not the same. And this one, more than any, why would I buy a Cayman if I can just buy a C8 Corvette? Well, I'm going to try and figure all that out in this review of the Porsche 718 Cayman. Ah yes, the base Porsche Cayman, the most affordable sports car you can buy with a Porsche badge. And a true sports car at that, with a mid-engine layout. How about the weight? Well, it's good there too. Feathery light at just over 3,100 pounds, and that's with the heavier PDK. And how does it put the power down? Well, rear-wheel drive only. Oh, and what about this one? What about this one? Does it come with a manual? Why, yes it does. Yet many say that the base Cayman wears an asterisk next to its name due to what? Well, mostly the engine. Because you see, the mid-engine layout is still here. But in prior Caymans, you got a naturally aspirated flat 6. Now that's been replaced with a 2-liter turbocharged flat 4, making 300 horsepower and 280 pounds-feet of torque. Thankfully, you still have a choice at transmissions with a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed PDK. Now with all that crying about the 4-cylinder, it still makes for the best performing base Cayman ever. 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds with the manual and 4.7 with the PDK. If you option in the Sport Chrono, it bumps down the time in the PDK to 4.5 seconds, but does nothing for the manual in terms of acceleration. So 0 to 60 time of 4.5 seconds. Not bad. But this is where the problem starts. And it's not just the problem for the Cayman, but for all other sports cars. Because Chevrolet builds a Corvette. It's also mid-engine, and its 0 to 60 time and other general performance related numbers are at supercar levels for $70,000. Even the Supra, coming in at a cheaper price, is faster than the Cayman, and now also available with a manual transmission. So now let's go to potential problem number 2, the interior. This generation of the Cayman has been out for 6 years now, and even though Porsche has refreshed it, it looks dated. The infotainment system and the screen are both last generation, and even the button style layout is starting to look a little out of place in a modern Porsche. Now, an area where the Cayman is really good is the overall interior quality, the fit and the finish and the way it makes you feel. It's really nice in here, and it wraps around you and provides great outward visibility, and for being such a small car, it's fantastic. And even the infotainment system can be looked at with a glass half full approach, because yes, it is somewhat dated, but it's simple and easy to use. And finally, the seat. I'm sitting in the base 2-way, but I highly recommend you consider either the 14 or the 18 ways because they're just super awesome. But it's more than just the numbers and the on-paper stuff. Well, yes it is. So let's see what the base Cayman is all about. Alright, so now the driving portion of the Cayman, and let's go ahead and turn this thing on and go for a drive. If you're new to Porsches, the ignition is on the left. Turn it to the right, fires up. The 4-popper sounds decent at startup. Seatbelt on. Let's turn the aircon off. It's a beautiful day here in SoCal. And let's go for a drive. So the first thing you'll notice, and one of the things that generally appeal to me about the Cayman, is its overall driving position and the feel that it gives you from behind the wheel. You sit in it, and even before starting the car, you say, oh, okay, I'm driving a sports car. This feels pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and put this thing in some of the go fast modes. Because this has Sport Chrono, I do have a little dial here that allows me to turn the modes and put it in Sport Plus, and in Sport Plus it does engage the exhaust baffles, opens them up, and I do have a Sport Response button that I'm going to hold off on for a second, and I will use once I make a turn onto my straight here. Manual shift mode, and let's see what this 4-popper is all about. So Sport Response is on, and let's get a little straight. Let's see. Yeah, this thing is pretty quick. Definitely not slow. Downshift a second, mash. Oh, the engine note from behind you adds on to the experience. Really, really nice. Turn. And let's come to a stop and let's roll on it. Complete stop, first gear, mash. Takes a second. Yeah, very, very quick car. This is not slow by any stretch of the imagination. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody was able to clock it faster than that. Now, two things that makes this car feel quick to me are, number one, that seating position that I was mentioning earlier as we set off. It kind of gives it that different type of vibe. And number two, it's actually high revving for a forced induction four-popper. Seeing the needle climb to 7,500, 7,600 is quite engaging and makes it fun. Now, if it had a manual, I bet you it would be a little bit more engaging, but nothing taken away from the fast shifting PDK. It is wonderful. Now, let me preface my next point here with the fact that a lot of people told me, and I've read mixed things about the Cayman, the base Cayman that is. Some people really like it, and some people wish that it still had the 6-cylinder. Now, my impressions of it is that it's still pretty engaging to drive. This is not a slow car by any means of the imagination, and it's not dull. Sure, it's not going to sound like a boxer 6-cylinder that you're expecting from a Porsche car, but it's still pretty good. And do not let the spec sheet fool you into thinking, oh, it's just a four-popper with a turbo, 2-liter small displacement. Forget about it. The Cayman's no good anymore. No, do not make that mistake. Give this car its proper diligence. Go out and take it for a drive, and I'm sure it will make your decision much tougher than you think it will. Now, let me tell you about the rest of this thing from a steering, suspension, and transmission standpoint very quickly. Obviously, the PDK, the 7-speed, is fantastic. It almost reads your mind no matter what mode you're in, and it makes it super easy to drive on a daily basis and in the city like this. As far as the steering goes, Porsche's electronic rack is very good. The weight is good, the feedback is good, and it's well known to be one of the best in the industry, and it's no different here in the Cayman. Now, as far as the suspension goes, this is a car that is based with a fixed suspension. It does not have PASM, and do not feel obligated to get PASM because this car is really nicely dampened and the suspension setup is fantastic. So it's good to be able to drive in the city like this on a daily basis, and at the same time, it is properly sporty and stiff. You drive over potholes or uneven streets like I'm driving here in downtown LA, and all of that feedback comes in through the suspension and into the car. So no obligation to get the PASM. This is plenty sporty enough in its base configuration. So that's the base 718 Cayman. Are there other more interesting 4-liter naturally aspirated trim levels? Yes, there are. But the base Cayman needs to exist. Is it a slow or boring car? Absolutely not. In fact, when you look at it by itself, it's quite amazing. It's got a lot of the formula correct. It's lightweight, it's mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, and still comes with a manual transmission. Something you can't say for the C8 Corvette. Now, rounding it off with the C8 versus Cayman discussion, I actually thought it would be an easy decision. But after driving this base Cayman, it's not. But ultimately, if I had to pick between the two, it's hard to pass up on the C8 for the price range. Maybe I'll change my mind if I ever get a chance to drive a 6-speed manual base Cayman. But that's all I've got. If you got any questions, please make sure you leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram @DriveSteady. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.